Everyone thought the Faulkner twins were just quiet new kids, until they were cornered after school and revealed what no one saw coming. Spokane Valley didn't feel like home. Not yet. Tyrese and DeShawn Faulkner stood outside Jefferson Ridge High on their first day, shoulders squared, matching hoodies, and the same quiet expression. Their mother called their guard face. They'd worn it a lot since leaving Oakland. Their mom, Renita Maranetta Faulkner, had landed a full-time nursing job at Sacred Heart. And with it came the move, the new school, and a promise. This is your fresh start, boys. She meant well. She always did. But even she could see the looks they got. When she enrolled them, it wasn't hate. Exactly, it was that strained politeness people use when they don't know what box to put you in. At first, Tyrese didn't say much. He never did. His brother DeShawn handled the talking when they had to introduce themselves. In homeroom, we just moved from Oakland, he said with that easy tone that used to make teachers back home love him. Our mom's working at the hospital now. There was a pause. Then someone muttered, figures from the back of the room. Not loud enough for the teacher to hear, but loud enough for Tyrese to catch it. He looked at DeShawn, who was already half smiling like he'd heard it too. They didn't say anything. At lunch they sat alone. Nobody invited them to sit anywhere. And they didn't ask. People watched them. Some with curiosity, some with suspicion. One kid actually stopped, chewing mid-bite just to stare as they walked past. Tyrese leaned in this place. Feels like it skipped a decade. DeShawn chuckled. Try to. Still they kept their heads down. They had each other, and that had always been enough. The twin thing worked in their favor. They moved in sync, finished each other's sentences, and could read the room without speaking a word. But here even that wasn't a shield. It started with little things. In gym class, Trevor Langley, a broad-shouldered linebacker with a buzz cut and a smirk that always felt a little too proud, accidentally bumped into Tyrese during flag football. Not once, not twice. 3 times. No apologies, you good man, DeShawn asked, stepping up beside his brother. Trevor just laughed. Didn't see you there. Hard to spot shadows. Tyrese stared at him. DeShawn put a hand on his brother's shoulder. Let it slide, he murmured low enough that only Tyrese could hear. Later that week, someone stuffed a crumpled piece of paper into DeShawn's locker. No name, just 4 words written in thick black marker. Go back to Oakland. He read it once, then again, then folded it, slipped it into his pocket, and walked out like nothing happened. Tyrese asked about it later, and DeShawn shrugged. Just noise they didn't tell their mom. She was already working 12-hour shifts. Exhausted when she got home. They knew she'd worry. And worse, she'd probably show up at the school. That wasn't what they wanted. They'd seen how that played out before. So they made a silent pact. Keep quiet, keep calm. Stay sharp. Just like their dad taught them before he passed. Most days after school, they trained. There was a small martial arts studio behind a strip mall on East Sprague Avenue. The owner, Mr. Takeda, had known their father from years back and let them train for free. Your father was a rare one, he'd said one evening as Tyrese practiced his kicks. Strong hands, quiet mind. DeShawn bowed. He raised us on that. But school wasn't getting easier, Trevor. And his crew had picked up on the twins' silence and decided to test it. More shoulder bumps. More slick comments. During lunch, Trevor once stood behind DeShawn in line and whispered, they say twins can feel each other's pain. Want to try it out? That one almost made Tyrese snap, almost. But he didn't. He remembered what his father used to say. You don't win anything by throwing the first punch, but you better be the one standing after the last. But silence has its limits. And sometimes, people mistake it for weakness. By the second month, everyone at Jefferson Ridge knew the twins' names. Not because they were popular, but because they were easy targets. Trevor Langley had turned them into a sport. He didn't always do it loud. That was the part that stung. It was sly, slick, mean in a way that didn't leave bruises but still hurt. The type of bullying you couldn't really explain, without sounding like you were making a big deal out of nothing. One morning in chemistry, Tyrese opened his textbook to find a post-it note inside, a drawing of a monkey. With which one are you scribbled underneath. He didn't blink, just crumpled the paper slowly, put it in his bag, and turned the page later. DeShawn caught Trevor staring at them during lunch. It wasn't curiosity. It was sport, like he was waiting to see how far he could go. You ever notice? Trevor said one day in gym, loud enough for a few people around him to hear. They're like statues. Don't talk, don't move. Maybe they don't speak English. One of his friends chuckled. I heard they only talk to each other, like code or something. Tyrese walked past them without breaking stride. DeShawn followed. Not a word, not a glance. But every time they stayed quiet. The line moved. Further, the teachers noticed, but didn't say much. Mr. Howley, the gym teacher, gave them that look, you know, the one. Like, don't cause trouble and trouble won't find you. It was exhausting. It made them feel like being noticed was already a problem. You ever think we're just not supposed to fit here? Tyrese asked one afternoon as they walked home, their breath visible in the cold Washington air. DeShawn adjusted his backpack. We weren't made to fit. We were made to take up space. People just don't like it when we do theirs. Nodded slowly. Still feels like we're waiting for something to pop off. DeShawn looked at him. It is Trevor's group had started getting bolder. In the locker room, one of them knocked DeShawn's bag off the bench and laughed. Oops, didn't see it there. In the hallway, someone whispered the N-word behind Tyrese. As he walked by, it wasn't new, but it still hit hard. One afternoon, a soda bottle came flying across the cafeteria and exploded near their table. Trevor's crew burst out laughing. Nobody owned up to it, nobody got punished. A janitor came, mopped it up, and life moved on like nothing happened. That was the worst part. How normal it all seemed to everyone else. The only place they found any kind of peace was at the studio. Mr. Takeda started, giving them private time after closing. You both hold a storm inside, he told them one night. But you don't let it own you. That's control. That's strength. They trained in silence. Kicks, blocks. Submissions. They weren't training to fight. They were training not to still. DeShawn started to change. A little more guarded. Less of his usual charm. One night he barely touched dinner. Their mom looked at him over her plate. Everything okay at school? She asked casually. Yeah, he said without looking up. Just tired. Renata studied him, then Tyrese. They both avoided her eyes. She didn't push. She just quietly cleared the table when they finished, her mouth pressed tight like she knew more than she let on. At school it felt like every day was a test of how much they could take, a test of when they would crack. One Friday Trevor walked past DeShawn and whispered, "You ever been jumped before?" Not with menace, with curiosity, like he was planning something and just thinking out loud. That night DeShawn didn't sleep. The next morning, Tyrese asked him, "You good?" DeShawn laced up his sneakers. "I'm getting real tired of being polite. But being tired and being ready aren't always the same thing. And sooner or later, one of those lines was going to break." It was Monday morning when Tyrese noticed the crack. Not a crack in the wall or the sidewalk, but in DeShawn. His brother walked into school with his jaw clenched and his fists tighter than usual. He didn't say much, and that was rare. DeShawn was the talker, the one who kept things level. They passed Trevor in the hall. Nothing happened. No bump, no words. Just a stare. But something in DeShawn shifted when their eyes met. Something small, but heavy. "You sure you're good?" Tyrese asked once they got to class. DeShawn didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "I'm fine. Just don't want to keep feeling like we owe people." Silence. Tyrese knew what he meant. He'd felt it too, the weight. The invisible chokehold of having to be the bigger person. Every day, even when people tried to drag you low. That night at the studio, Mr. Takeda could feel it too again. He said as DeShawn slammed a pad with a roundhouse kick. DeShawn exhaled sharply and reset. Again, the third kick was sharper. Snappier. Takeda paused. "Anger isn't your enemy," he said, "but it's not your ally either. It burns fast. Leaves ashes." DeShawn just nodded. He was sweating. Focused, but there was something behind his eyes. Like his mind was somewhere else. Entirely. Later that night at home, their mom was asleep on the couch, her scrub still on. Tyrese and DeShawn sat on the porch, legs stretched out. Silence between them. Tyrese finally said, "You think he's gonna try something?" DeShawn leaned back. "He's already trying. It's just a matter of when he stops playing." Tyrese looked at him. "You sure you're ready?" DeShawn looked up at the sky. "We've been ready since we were 9. Their dad had made sure of that. Every Saturday morning in Oakland, they'd roll out the mats in the garage. No excuses, rain or shine. If they were sick, they stretched. If they were tired, they drilled slowly. No shortcuts. You don't fight for pride. Their father used to say, you fight for peace, and only when it's the last option standing." The problem was, peace was getting harder to hold on to. The next day during lunch, Trevor walked past their table, and without breaking Stride spilled a carton of milk over DeShawn's tray. Everyone saw it, laughed. DeShawn stood up slowly. "Clean it up," he said. Voice low. Trevor turned, pretending to act confused. What? Tyrese placed a hand on his brother's arm. "Don't," he whispered. DeShawn looked at him, then back at Trevor. "I said clean it up." Trevor's friends stood up behind him. But so did Tyrese. For a moment the room went still. Not quiet, just tense. A second too long. Then Mr. Howley blew his whistle from across the cafeteria and stormed over. "Sit down now." The twins sat. Trevor and his crew backed away, smirking. But the message was clear now. The Faulkner twins weren't going to keep eating disrespect like lunch. The rumors started the next day. "They're violent. They threatened Trevor. They're always mean, mugging people." It didn't matter that none of it was true. People only remembered what fit their narrative. And what they wanted was to paint the twins as the problem. By Thursday, the assistant principal called them in. "We've been hearing some complaints," she said, not looking either of them in the eye. "This isn't an accusation. Just a check-in." DeShawn stared at her. "From who? I can't disclose names," she said quickly. "Just try to stay out of trouble, okay?" Teresa clenched his jaw. "Outside the office. DeShawn said they want us to stay out of sight." Tyrese looked at him, but we were never really in it. That night, neither of them went to the studio. They just sat in their room. Lights low, music off, waiting. But pressure doesn't just build forever. It finds a way out, one way or another. It was a Friday afternoon. The kind of day when the school building seemed to exhale. Teachers loosening ties. Students buzzing to get out. And security staff pretending to care less than usual. Tyrese and DeShawn didn't wait around. As soon as the last bell rang, they made a straight line for the exit. Their mom had picked up an extra shift, which meant walking home. No big deal, they didn't mind the air. But today felt off. There were footsteps behind them. More than usual. Slower, intentional. Tyrese noticed first. He tilted his head just slightly. Just enough for DeShawn to catch it. They reached the far end of the student parking lot where the school cameras didn't quite reach. And the teachers' cars were long gone. Then came the voice. "Hey, you two, got a second?" They turned. Trevor Langley stood about 15 feet away, flanked by two of his usual tagalongs. Bio Wilmer and Chad Colt. Big guys, all of them. Football players. Angry for reasons they didn't even understand. DeShawn tilted his head. "You lost?" Trevor smiled. Slow and smug. "Not just figured we'd talk. You know, clear the air." Tyrese took a small step forward. "Didn't know we had air to clear." Trevor kept walking toward them. "Yeah, well, people are saying things about you too. Like how you think you're better than everybody. Always walking around like you own the place." DeShawn's voice was calm. "We walk, we go to class. We train. That's it, yeah." Trevor laughed. "You train? What is this, some karate kid thing?" His boys laughed behind him. Tyrese stayed still. His stance didn't change, but his feet were planted just right. DeShawn took a step forward. "You really want this?" Trevor looked around. No teachers, no cameras. "You sure you want to do this here?" Then he swung. It was fast, but not fast enough. Tyrese ducked, his body shifted with precision. Just like the drills. Just like the garage in Oakland. He stepped to the side and swept Trevor's leg. The boy hit the pavement hard. Not with a thud, but with a thump that echoed. Bio moved in next. Arms out wide like he was trying to grab a fridge. DeShawn sidestepped and twisted. One quick movement and Bio was face down, groaning. Chad hesitated for a second. He looked at his friends. Then at the twins. Then he backed up slowly. Hands raised. A small group of students had started to gather. Phones out, recording. Nobody screamed. Nobody jumped in. They just watched. Quiet, wide-eyed. DeShawn stood over Trevor. Not gloating, just breathing. "You think we don't know how to fight? Because we don't throw hands every day." He said, "You think quiet means weak?" Trevor didn't answer. His mouth was bleeding. Tyrese looked down at him. "This isn't about being tough. This is about being tired." By the time the security guard finally showed up, the moment had already ended. "What's going on here?" The man barked, eyeing the crowd and the phones. "Self-defense." Someone in the back said, "We got the whole thing." Trevor tried to speak, but he couldn't find the words. The security guard looked from the twins to the others. On the ground, then back at the twins. "Go home, I'll file a report. But I'm not calling the cops over this." Nobody argued. The twins turned and walked away. Bags still slung over their backs like nothing happened. But everything had changed. The next morning the video was everywhere. On Snapchat, Instagram. TikTok. By noon, a local news station had picked it up. Under the headline, Twin Students Defend Themselves. After racial harassment at Jefferson Ridge. Some people called them heroes. Others called them violent. But nobody could pretend not to know what had been happening anymore. But when the truth comes out in public, people start choosing sides. And the real fight begins. By Monday morning, Jefferson Ridge High wasn't the same. Students stared, teachers whispered. Phones were out like flashlights in a blackout. Every hallway, lit by screens, playing the same 30-second clip on loop. Tyrese dodging the punch. DeShawn flipping bow onto the pavement. Trevor bleeding and breathless. The school's front office was packed before the first bell. Parents, reporters. One local pastor. Someone from the district office had flown in. It wasn't just gossip now. It was pressure. In second period, the twins were pulled out of class. Principal Roderick sat behind his desk, like he was preparing for battle. He was the type of man who always looked a little flustered, like his job was too big for his blazer. I've seen the footage. He began, folding his hands tightly. And I want to be clear. I don't condone violence. Tyrese leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. So what do you call it when people throw punches at you, and you don't let them land? Principal Roderick exhaled. There's a difference between defense and escalation. DeShawn leaned forward. There's also a difference between silence and survival. That shut him up. Eventually, the school announced that no charges would be filed, and the twins weren't suspended. But Trevor and Bo, they got a 2-week suspension and a letter sent home. Not for what they did, just for disruptive behavior. That was it. It didn't sit right. Not with Tyrese, not with DeShawn, and not with a lot of the students either. Because for once, the story couldn't be ignored. Everyone saw it. The black and white clip, the clean movements, the restraint, the part where the twins didn't throw punches. They just redirected them, controlled them. One sophomore named Jamie Chavez posted the video with a caption. They weren't violent. They were disciplined. Big difference. It got shared thousands of times. Still, not everyone wanted to listen. In history class, a boy 2 rows behind Tyrese muttered. But they learned all that in juvie. Tyrese turned slowly, eyes steady. Say that again. The boy turned red and looked away. Teachers started shifting. Some avoided eye contact. Others tried too hard to be friendly. Mr. Howley, the gym coach who'd once ignored Trevor's stunts, suddenly wanted to check in after class. You boys good? He asked one day after P, clapping a little too hard on DeShawn's shoulder. DeShawn raised an eyebrow. Good as we ever were. But behind the awkward smiles and forced conversations, the school was changing quietly. Uneasily, one by one, other students started speaking up. A black junior named Sierra Parker went to the school board with a folder full of emails and notes she'd saved for over a year. Racist messages, group chat screenshots, even a photo of a slur written on her locker. 2 semesters ago, they said it was just a prank, she told the board. But it wasn't. It never was. Then came Ethan Patel, an Indian freshman who had been called Curry Boy since orientation, and Emily, who said a teacher once told her, "Your English is surprisingly clear." All of them had stories, and all of them had stayed quiet. Until now, the school was forced to respond. Diversity meetings were scheduled. Assemblies were planned. Parents were invited. But none of it felt like justice. Just noise, just reaction. That Friday, the Faulkners came home to find a handwritten letter in their mailbox. No return address. Just a torn notebook page. It read, "Y'all think you're special now. Watch your backs, Tyrese." Read it twice. DeShawn snatched it, tore it into 4 clean pieces, and threw it in the trash. "We've been watching our backs since the day we were born," he said. Their mom sat them down that night. For the first time since the fight, she cried, "I raised you boys to be strong. Not just in the body, but in your name. Don't ever let this place shrink you. Don't let it turn you cold." They didn't say much, but in their silence, something solidified. But standing tall only works if the ground beneath you holds. And some folks will do anything to make it shake. 2 weeks after the fight, the school finally held its community healing assembly. The auditorium was packed. Parents, students, teachers, a school board member, even a local news crew, sitting near the back with a tripod, and too many questions. At the front sat Tyrese and DeShawn, side by side, calm, composed. Still, the principal stood at the podium and delivered a long speech. Words like progress, Dialogue and commitment to diversity floated through the air like balloons. No one really wanted to catch. People clapped politely. Some even nodded along. But the room didn't shift until DeShawn got up to speak. He hadn't planned to, neither of them had. But when he stood the room, hushed without anyone asking it to, he stepped up to the microphone. No paper, no speech. Just his voice. "Most of you don't know us," he said, and for a while, "We didn't want you to. We just came here to get through the year, do our work, and stay out of the way." He paused. But then people decided that wasn't enough. That we were too quiet, too different, too black. A few teachers tensed. A parent whispered something to another. DeShawn didn't blink. They thought because we didn't fight back, we were weak, but what they didn't understand was, we weren't scared. We were raised on discipline. Our dad taught us that a real fighter knows when not to swing. He glanced over at Tyrese, who gave him the faintest nod. "We didn't come here to be examples," DeShawn said, "but now that we are, let's be real about what that means. Don't just say you're listening. Prove it. Pay attention when people say something's wrong. Speak up when you see it happen. And stop blaming the kids who defend themselves like they started the fire." There was silence. Then slowly people started clapping, not everyone, but enough to feel real. Tyrese stood beside his brother. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. After the assembly, a group of students came up to them in the hallway. Kids they'd never spoken to before. "I saw what happened." One said, "I should have said something sooner." Another added, "I've been through it too. Not like that, but I get it." Even Trevor Langley's mom showed up at their locker. Later that day, she looked tired. Wrung out, "I'm not here to excuse anything." She said just, "Thank you for not hurting my son worse. You had every right." Tyrese nodded, his voice quiet. "We didn't want to hurt anybody." She nodded back, eyes glossy, then turned and walked away. By the end of the week, changes started rolling in the district. Approved a peer support council. Every classroom got anonymous reporting forms. Teachers went through bias training, mandatory, not optional, and while it didn't fix everything, it changed something. The weight of silence had been broken at home. Their mom finally took a Saturday off. She made breakfast from scratch: waffles, grits, fried apples, the whole spread. She laughed more that morning than she had in months. "You know what I think?" she said, pouring syrup. "Y'all did more than stand up for yourselves. You made a whole system look at itself." DeShawn grinned. "Didn't plan to." Tyrese smirked. "Didn't need to." She leaned back in her chair, eyes soft. "Still proud of you. Proud of how you handled it. You made your daddy proud." They ate together. No tension, no headlines. No threats, just a family whole. But change isn't just a moment. It's what you carry forward when the moment's passed. Spring came fast to Spokane Valley. Trees began to bloom along the sidewalks near the school, and kids talked about prom, finals, and what came next. But for Tyrese and DeShawn, it wasn't just about finishing the year anymore. It was about walking through it, with their heads held high. They weren't just the twins anymore. They were the ones who didn't fold. The ones who forced everyone to pay attention. Some kids gave them quiet nods now. Others said, "What's up?" in the hall. And a few even asked to train with them at the studio. Not out of fear, but respect. Still, they kept their circle tight. Trust wasn't something they handed out easily. One afternoon, Mr. Takeda asked them to stay late. The studio was empty. The lights dimmed, the mats rolled out. He stood there holding a small wooden box. "Your father gave me this before he passed," he said, voice low. "Said to give it to you when you were ready." Tyrese and DeShawn exchanged a look. One of those quiet conversations only they could have without speaking. Mr. Takeda opened the box slowly. Inside were 2 hand-stitched black belts folded with care, embroidered with their names in gold. Thread. Their breath caught, not because they didn't feel ready, but because it meant something more now. "You've earned this," he said, not just through technique, but by knowing when not to fight. That's the part most never learn. They bowed. Deep honest. After they left, Tyrese walked in silence for a block before saying, "You ever think about how different this year could have gone?" DeShawn nodded. "All the time. One bad decision. We could have been painted as villains." Tyrese kicked at a pebble on the sidewalk. "Funny how we did everything we were taught, and still it was never enough until people saw us defend ourselves." DeShawn thought for a second. "That's because the world don't really listen until it's forced to. But once it hears you, you make it hard to forget." At school, a mural was being painted on one of the gym walls. Students of all backgrounds, arms linked. It was the art class's idea. One of the hands in the middle wore a bracelet like the one Tyrese always wore. They didn't say anything, but they saw it. The assistant principal stopped them in the hall, one day offering a tight smile. "I've learned a lot from you too." She said, "Thank you for your patience." DeShawn nodded. It wasn't patience. It was control. And she understood what he meant. That week the school launched a mentorship program, pairing older students with freshmen, struggling to adjust. The twins were invited to speak on the first day. Tyrese stepped up this time. "Strength," he said to the room, "isn't about how hard you hit. It's about how you carry yourself. When no one's watching, when people push you to lose your cool, and you still hold it down. That's power. That's what makes you unbreakable." DeShawn added, "Don't let silence swallow you. Speak. Right train. Walk like you belong. Because you do. Even when they try to convince you otherwise." The applause wasn't loud, but it was real. By June, graduation was around the corner. The seniors and Trevor's crew were moving on. Trevor himself barely spoke anymore. He walked past the twins without a word. The swagger gone. He wasn't the same kid who swung first in that parking lot. Maybe that was his lesson. Their mom framed the news clipping with the headline, "Twin brothers changed the conversation at Jefferson Ridge." She hung it by the front door like a reminder. "You boys didn't just make it through," she told them. "You made it matter." That night, as the house quieted down, Tyrese looked out the window and said, "You think this was the end of something?" DeShawn shook his head. "Nah, this was just chapter 1. Because when you're forced to fight for your place, and you choose discipline over destruction, that's not survival. That's legacy." Thanks for watching. If this story moved, you share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button. And remember, strength doesn't always look loud, but it always stands tall.